dance out in the cold dark night. Screams echo loud, no wrong, no right. Rescue calls flash blood red sky. Spirits linger, waiting not to die. Ghosts on the line, they whisper and wail. Fingers reaching out, pale as they fail.
Good afternoon, everybody. It's a rainy weekend in our neck of the woods, so Mad Max and Mud Lover thought that we would go ahead and do a funeral home segment because what's better than a scary funeral home story on a cloudy, stormy day?
I can't think of anything.
I know. And it's been raining nonstop here for like 2 weeks.
It's ridiculous. It really is.
Everything is flooded. It's terrible. But I mean, I know we need it, and then we'll be like whining in a month that we need the rain. But I'm okay if it stops for a while.
Definitely.
Yeah.
I'm with you. Right?
Yeah.
As long as it doesn't snow. I was up north last week and getting hailed on. So
Oh, yeah.
good
You were up
times.
north in Idaho or?
I was in Idaho Falls.
Okay.
And it started, just pounding rain. And I looked up and I thought, God, raindrops usually don't bounce off the hood of my truck. And
Yeah.
they were about the size of BBs.
Yeah, I was in Butte last week and we got snow.
Oh,
Yeah.
wow.
It melted pretty quick, but it stayed just on the valley floor. It melted, but still, it was all snow all around. Yeah, it sucked. It's like, come
Yeah.
on now. I want to get out and
It's
do some
May.
stuff. And it was terrible weather. But
Yeah.
what are you going to do? It's sprinter. So
Yeah, exactly.
We have a place that we want to go explore in Montana. Or is it Wyoming? Montana?
Wyoming.
It's Wyoming. They all run together.
Wyoming.
And, sorry, Wyoming people. But it's your fault for living there. Anyway, but we can't go up there and explore because it's been raining so much, and the places we want to get into, just no, bad news.
Yeah,
So,
it's terrible. You're just not going to be able to do it.
right.
So
Exactly.
I don't know if any of our listeners have been to Bodie, the ghost town in Bodie, California, right? It's on the Nevada California border. And
Right.
but it's such high elevation that I think there's only like 2 months of the year you can get in there, even with 4-wheel drive. So
We were there been about 4 years, and that place, you talk about, you just go into a whole different time when you go there, and they have the sign. You've seen the signs, right? The signs that say "Don't take anything because of the curse of Bodhi."
the curse. Yeah, the curse.
And people take rocks, and they'll take, because I get it. You see some really cool stuff, and then some bad stuff happens to them, and they send it back to the park. They say, "Hey, look, please, I'm sorry, please put this back in the park."
Yeah.
And it breaks the curse, but no.
So somewhere I have one of them damn rocks because that's what's gone on with my life, but I can't find it to send it back. So I have no idea what I I was like 12. The first time I went, and I always have a pocket full of rocks when I'm leaving.
Yeah.
But okay, so let's get on with this story because this is a long one. And this is
All right.
So we've done a few funeral home series, and we started here with Pocatello. We have to always say alleged because he has not been through the court process yet, because there are so many families involved on that one that they're doing a class action suit. And it's going to take forever.
Yeah.
But the one that we're doing now it's something that's been settled quite a long time ago. This happened in the 80s, 90s through like all the way through like 2018. I mean, this is a history. There's a history here.
The same place?
Ooh.
Yeah. So what happened, and this is the Cantrell funeral home in Detroit. Detroit, there's so many problems with funeral homes in Detroit that the FBI actually came in and helped create a task force because of the terrible things that these funeral homes were doing. And LARA, which is the licensing regulatory authority in Michigan, could not keep on top of it. And they don't have enough staff. They don't, I mean, it's just like everything else. You just can't stay on top of these bad actors. So they had to end up with the task force. And I think we'll get into it on this one.
Oh,
But
wow.
there's been a whole bunch of problems in Detroit. And so it's the Michigan Licensing Agency. That's LARA, the licensing agency. And they provide an outline of all of the problems because there's so many that plague this. And it starts, in 1985, Raymond Cantrell Sr., he gets a mortuary science license. And most states require some sort of college education. Doesn't have to be through bachelor's, but you have to take some sort of classes, and then you have to be an apprentice for so long in various parts of funeral homes, right? So whether it's
Okay.
conducting a service, whether it's embalming, it's all of this stuff that comes along with funeral homes. Each segment of that requires so many hours to get a license. Otherwise, you're really an apprentice. So Cantrell Sr. gets his license and he opens the funeral home, and I guess he's senior, and then the second, his son, in 1985, a month later, gets his license. So they kind of go into business together. Like, hey, son, let's do this. It's one of those
Mhm.
businesses that will never end, right?
Yeah,
So,
true.
unfortunately.
Yeah. Mm.
So they incorporate in 1987, and in 1980, let's see, and then they work through from 87 to 2017. Senior's the designated manager of the Cantrell Funeral Home. They hire in 1995 a gal named Jamaica Boone, and she obtains her mortuary science degree and licensing. Okay, so she's now coming in to help because it's Detroit. That's a lot of population and not a lot of funeral homes, so they needed extra help. But this is where things started kind of unraveling just a little bit. So 95 Jamaica comes in. 96 they get a fine levied against them because they're having a problem maintaining their license and registration. You got to keep up with that kind of stuff. But if you're busy, I can see how you let those things lapse. Sometimes you're like, oh crap, I do it with my truck title, right?
Right. Yeah.
I've been like a
Mhm.
month late. Go, oh my God, it's sitting right here, and I got to go pay it, and yeah, so I can get
Yeah.
that. I understand that. So they start. 1999 is when things start really going south at this funeral home. They get a complaint was written to LARA about unlicensed individuals performing embalming services. So everybody that works at the funeral home has to be licensed, and they probably have a pretty good staff. So now they get a $1,500 fine from LARA imposed against them because you've got people who are not trained to do. I guess, if you're an apprentice, you would probably need somebody there with you in the room. You couldn't do it
Right.
on your own, I'm
No.
assuming.
Why would you want to? You
Yeah,
know?
it's funny. Two or three of the guys I served with in the Navy, when they got out of the service, this is what they went into. And it's
Oh,
one of
wow.
those occupations, when you look at the top 10 occupations to make money, like steady money in the country, funeral homes is one of the top.
Wow.
A
Yeah.
buddy of mine that I went to high school with, that was his life goal. That was his dream, to go be a mortician. And I wanted to be a fireman. Go figure. But yeah, he that was it. He wanted to be a mortician. That was all he ever talked about. And Right? That's kind of interesting. But I guess people have to do it. It's kind of like working at the dump.
Yeah, I guess so. But and one of Tim on our team, that's what he does. So he works at the funeral home. He did
Oh,
it all
Yeah.
through high school, and then he too, and he was went into fire and did stuff like that. Went back into funeral home. He
oh
has a good
wow.
way with
Interesting.
people, and it helps to have that good rapport with people. So
Yeah.
Yeah,
yeah.
definitely.
So okay, so 99 you get the $1,500 fine. 2,000 they get an order against them with another $1,000 fine that they paid. The complaint alleged this complaint was failure to timely embalm a body, incompetence, and gross negligence.
Um,
That's
Wow.
uh, failure to timely embalm somebody. Yeah, I'm not really good at math, but I know that 2 + 2 and a body stinks.
yeah,
You
yeah.
know,
That so this isn't sounding good. And then so that was in May of
No,
2000.
no.
In September 2000, inspectors get there to the funeral home because now they have complaints. And I don't know how Lara works, but I was an inspector in state of California and out in Texas, and one of my roles was to inspect funeral homes that were crematoriums specifically. And if we had a complaint, we had to roll within 24 hours to get to the facility, no matter what the complaint is. So I don't know why it takes them so long to get out there unless they did go and that's why there was fines. I don't know, but now they're out there and they're looking. This is September of 2000, and they found 11 bodies housed off of the preparation room, including an infant, just on gurneys, not refrigerated, not embalmed, just
Mm.
laying on gurneys. Can't happen. They're in a state of decay.
it's heartbreaking. How? I
Wow.
mean, I realize you build up, uh, you get desensitized.
Yeah.
From that kind of stuff. You're like, oh, okay, well, I guess that's Bob. Hey Bob. But when you get to that point where it's just a day, we're not even going to act on it. We'll take your money, but we're not going to act on it. That's kind of heartbreaking.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, granted, the individual is no longer in their body, it's just their shell, right? But still, that something to
Still.
somebody's family,
Right.
they're still,
Exactly.
that's what kills me about this stuff, what goes on, because the lack of respect that they have for the living, the
Yeah.
people who are mourning. So, and, and, and we've had this, we did that one funeral home where that guy was just like burying people out in the back 40
Oh,
because he
right.
just yeah, that's one of the ones that we did not too long ago, and he was just he couldn't cremate them all because they were coming in so fast that he started just burying them, right? And so I understand the volume problem, but at some point you say we can't take them. We
Right.
we we're done. We're done until we can catch up,
Definitely.
you
It's
know?
heartbreaking. Yes.
Yeah, like you call the coroner and say you got to keep them, or you arrange for cold storage or something. You got to do something, but that wasn't happening here. All right.
You go to Costco in their refrigerated area. You got
Yeah.
eggs, you got cheese, and Bob.
And Bob.
Bob. Bob's just
That
all
would make
chill.
Costco interesting, wouldn't it? Yeah.
Put a Costco, put a Costco shirt on Bob. How
Oh,
cool would that be?
God, come on.
People just
Wow.
wheeling bodies in. Anyway. Okay, so we've got the 11 bodies now. That was September, so they have to go back within a month because that's how inspections work. If you write a notice of correction or a notice of violation, you have to go back in 30 days to perform a reinspection. It's like that's just the standard. They go back in and they find 10 of the 11 bodies were buried, but the 11th body, who was the baby, remained unclaimed by the family with the balance due And so the funeral home's just not going to bury the baby. So it's just there. There,
Hmm.
a baby.
Wow.
Okay. Here's what I don't understand. But maybe I don't understand how it all works. But I guess, okay, to get into some personal history here. So my uncle committed suicide at my house. And I had to pay for his cremation and his storage, the storage of his ashes or his body until he was cremated, because I was considered the next of kin. So they were going to
Okay.
come after me, and they'd put, in state of California, they'll put a lien on your property.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
Yeah, they'll come after you. So I guess if you don't own anything, maybe they just attach your wages or take your taxes if you get a return or something like that. But
Hmm.
so the funeral home, so he stayed after the investigation with the coroner, then he went to the funeral home, and I'm like, he has a sister, go after his sister for the money, but they went after me
Hmm.
because I'm front and center, because it happened on
Yeah.
my property. And they said, well, you're here and we're just going to go after you. You go after your aunt, kind of thing, for
Wow.
the money. That's how it works. And so the court, they get this, maybe they get the baby from the hospital or something, and the family doesn't have any money. What happens?
Oh,
Doesn't the state pick that up? I don't know.
wow. Interesting.
I would imagine there's an agency that, probably only pays for a no frills, like a Potter's Field type thing. You would imagine. I don't know.
I don't know.
Yeah, because look at the homeless population in California. Those people die every day. Who pays for that?
But I'm sure the taxpayers are paying for that,
Yeah.
that, there's a pool of money set aside for indigent burial, because when you look at the cost of stuff anymore, it's astronomical. And that's why there's a million GoFundMe accounts to help me bury Uncle Fred, because he just died
Yeah.
and he didn't have any money and he
Makes
has
sense.
no property. So, yeah. Anyway, so they find this poor baby, the baby that had been
Mm.
there a month before, and we don't know how long it had been
Poor
there
baby.
before that. Okay. So it's just there. So they get their license. So Junior, so Raymond Cantrell Jr.'s mortuary license is placed on probation. He's fined $6,000, and he's required to make restitution of $41,456. Okay. So now he's got some money he owes the state, because the state probably went after them to, why didn't you coordinate with us, kind of thing? Why didn't you get this body buried? So now the state is charging him, because usually in the way it is in environmental stuff, I don't know about this, but if somebody didn't pay their fee, like if we gave them a notice of violation because of X in whatever industry, if they didn't pay the fine that accompanied it, then we would take them to court, and it's 3 times the fine.
Hmm.
Wow.
So, yeah, so if it's a $10,000 fine that I would write, then it's a $30,000 fine if we have to collect, if they don't pay it. So minimum, and then it goes up from there. So I don't know in this instance, but
Right.
he didn't
Hmm.
pay it until 2017. That was in 2002. So we had a
Wow.
long, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it
So,
says the
so
fine was
this,
not collected from Treasury until January 31st, 2017, and proof of restitution was not provided until November of 2016. So I don't know, there's a discrepancy there in the years, but anyway, his license was suspended until he paid that fine. So his license had been suspended this whole time.
So
Okay.
is he operating still?
Well, from what I believe, I think the young lady that was working for them, Jamaica, I think she was operating, because she had her
Oh,
license.
okay.
We'll go through it a little bit more, but this is kind of bonkers. So 2004, so now we go backwards to 2004 because 2002 is when he got that huge fine. They find the body, the baby. 2004, October, they get, boom, another fine, $10,000 because based on a statement of complaint alleging unlicensed activity of individuals working at the establishment. Again, I don't know how people are finding this out or if it's other funeral home staff that are
Oh,
complaining, because a lot
yeah.
of times in what I used to do, it was other businesses that would can make the complaint against in the same field.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like, you know, in California, there's a thing called specialty coating for auto body industries. It's a
Mhm.
specialty paint. It's higher VOCs. You can only use like less than 5% of your total coatings in an auto body shop
Mhm.
can be specialty coating because they're calculating VOCs going into the air, blah, blah, blah. Well, it would be mom and pop hot rod shop using primarily specialty coatings. So they're belching out more VOCs. And then it would be like, you know, this chain down the street that knew they only had 5% that they could use to do the specialty coatings, complaining on mom and pop. So that's how they would get busted. You know what I mean? So it's
Yeah.
usually industry specific, narking on another piece of the industry. I don't know. But how would I know? Like if I walked into one of our funeral homes around here, how would I know if they're not licensed?
Yeah.
What they have to, well, I don't know specifically, and I can't remember because it's thankfully been a while since I've had to bury anybody. But which is that's just a heartbreaking process. But I know that they have to show licensing in other particular, like for example, a restaurant. They have to show that they've had their current. I would imagine, I would hope that a funeral parlor would do the same thing. You
Sure.
know, have to show that kind. But I don't know. You know, maybe people just because, like I said, that is such a bad time in your life that you're going
Yeah. You
through.
don't even look.
I
Yeah,
didn't look when my parents
No.
died. I didn't
right?
look.
No.
Yeah.
You know,
You
I
just
just went to the
assume.
local funeral home and I assumed everything's above board. And thankfully, I
Yeah.
didn't go to the guy down here in Pocatello.
No kidding.
Yeah,
Right.
yeah. So, anyway, they get this next fine, and so it was. Then everything cooks along for a little over 10 years because I think uh Junior, I don't know where Senior is. I don't know if he retired at this point, but Junior's running the business, but he's not licensed. So Jamaica is now the designated manager. And she goes along until April of 2018 when her license is suspended. And now Cantrell's registration to act as a funeral home lapsed for non-renewal. So that
Ooh.
was in 2017. So you have all of this stuff goes along and you had a few bumps, some serious bumps, but it seemed like everything kind of leveled out. Everybody's playing right. And then to November 2017, the investigators appear again because they get yet another complaint. And now they're denied access on the investigation to go in there by Raymond Cantrell the second junior. He denies them access. As a state inspector, if I was denied access to go anywhere,
Mhm.
because we were always unannounced, I did
Yeah.
everything from auto body shops to crematoriums. It didn't matter. I was out. If I had a badge, and if I was denied access, I would call the sheriff's department or the police department, and I'm in the door because
Yeah.
I have the authority. And whoo, that's bad news. So that's bad news.
Yeah.
Yeah,
What do you
I
So
hide?
now
know.
they're going,
Yeah, yeah. I know that OSHA does the same thing back home. That if you turn them away, number one, you never turn them away. But if you don't let them in, not only are you looking at law enforcement backup, you're looking at fines, and that's when they start writing fines, writing tickets for stuff like that. So we were always told if an OSHA inspector comes on board, you better be making phone calls
yeah,
because yeah, you don't want just some regular inspector out there. You want somebody that is paid to do that specific job, and yeah, you better be making phone calls.
Yeah. And when I was let into any kind of facility, when they'd say, "Oh, yes, but can you give us like 20 minutes? Our manager's off site, but he's on his way back." Absolutely. I'm not there to bust their chops. I'm just there to do my job. They have their job to do. But if they denied me access, I've I've had guns drawn on me. I've been thrown into vehicles by people. Like guy picked me up and threw me into my inspection vehicle. Um, I've had numerous
Dang.
things happen in California. Texas was a lot better actors, but California was rough and tumble. It was like one lady grabbed my clipboard and she tried to hit me on the head with it, one of those big metal clipboards with
Dang.
yeah, I grabbed her wrist and stopped her, but like I'm like, "What are you doing?" Yeah,
Yeah.
she was mad. It's just weird.
Yeah,
So much
you take
anger.
it from that. You take it from that to now somebody's going to jail for battery.
Yeah.
Exactly.
You know,
And then
Yeah.
and
look,
everything's just going to add and add and add and add.
I
Yeah.
digress a little bit because the story I had to do dry cleaners inspections, right? And so before it was green, even though green doesn't mean green, guys. When you go
No.
to a green dry cleaner, they're still not green. It's just a different solvent that they're using. Okay. But so I had to do a lot of dry cleaners were owned by either like the Vietnamese, Korean, that it seemed to be in Sacramento County anyway, right? So I'm there and I'm doing inspection and this little guy, I come up and I get out of the car and I go in and I'm so and so and I'm with the air quality management district and I'm here to do your inspection. And he's just started screaming at me in like Korean or Vietnamese, whatever it was. And I'm just like, look at him like, uh-oh, what's going on here? Because I've been there like 4 years, 5 years in a row. Well,
Oh.
when he stopped and took a breath, I said, whoa, I'm going to walk out the door. And then I'm going to come back in and you're going to say, hello, Colleen, it's nice to see you. I said, because if you don't, I guarantee you I can find a violation. That's just the nature of the business. It's like, so if you're nice to me, then let's start over again. Cause I don't know what kind of day he's had, right? So I go out the
Yeah.
door and I come back in, he goes, hello, Colleen, it's nice to see you. And we get through the inspection, and that's when I walked into his office to look at his paperwork, and he had a pump shotgun. He had his 40 or 45 Glock sitting on the desk because he's been robbed. But what I didn't
Oh.
know was I was like the fourth inspector in 2 days to hit him because
Oh.
we don't know what other agencies are doing. And
Mm.
he can't get his work done. And he's up to his eyeballs in inspections. And he is just so angry over all of it. And I'm like, I'm so sorry. I didn't know. And we have to be unannounced. So he forgave me and he invited me to the dry cleaners Christmas ball. Fun. I didn't go. But anyway,
Oh.
isn't that funny?
Yeah.
Okay. So I don't know what's going on with all of this stuff going on in this funeral home. And they get in there and they finally so it was like almost a month later that they go back to do the inspection after they were denied entry, which I don't understand Michigan law and how it works. In California that wouldn't fly. We would have waited, gotten a police officer, done an escort in. At that point, we stand back, the police makes entry because we have the authority and now there are power to get in. So they waited until they were denied entry November 29th, and it wasn't until December 20th, 2017 they get in. So they go in to do their inspection. They find paint on the embalming room walls were peeling, and there's a large water stain on the back wall. It's not super egregious, but it's not good. Like everything's supposed to be clean. And every funeral home, embalming room, because I'd have to usually walk through the embalming rooms to get to the crematorium. Everything that I ever inspected was ship tight, like you perfect, clean, like you would expect an operating room to be. They were clean, orderly, perfect. So this would be a little disconcerting because then when you look at something like this, you go, what else is going on that I can't see? Okay.
Yeah, see, and that's the thing. Once you see one thing, I mean, you go through looking for egregious stuff.
Yeah.
But once you see one thing, then you're thinking to yourself, okay, what am I not seeing? And I start
Exactly.
looking a little bit deeper and I start wondering why this stain is here, or why is this door locked and I can't get in because I'm supposed to have full run of the place.
Yeah. And then you're looking at peeling paint going, well, this is a lack of maintenance and give a shit. Really? I mean, come on, this is
Definitely.
an establishment. It's a business. Get up there and fix it. Have somebody fix it. So anyway, so that was December 2017. February 2018, they go back and do another inspection, and they determine the embalming room still had peeling paint, chipping paint. Now the floor is grimy. There's stains all over the wall, and the protective gear that they wear, like everybody's seen like a CSI show, but you have protective gear over your clothing so you're not getting fluid on it and everything else. It's all stained and grimy and hanging up on these pegs, and it's just now it's beginning to look like a horror movie.
Ugh.
Okay.
Maybe that's how they're making
Yeah.
extra money.
You'd be renting this space out at night.
Mm.
Oh my God.
Can you imagine that?
Ugh. Okay. You know, it
That
did
would be
bother
cool.
me when I was
No.
inspecting, but because it was work. I can open that compartment in my head and say, okay, this is work. This is not my grandpa. This is work.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. So that was February 2018. Now the inspectors are on these guys. March or April 2018, they come back, and during this visit, they find 2 embalmed bodies and caskets in the garage, just hanging out.
Hanging out.
And yeah, Mr. Cantrell indicated that the funeral home was delaying final disposition of the bodies because they hadn't been paid yet. So they're just there in a garage. Okay. And the bodies had been at the funeral home since the previous November and December of 2017, hanging out. So I guess
Oh
the inspectors didn't see them before, or they were in cold storage or something, but now they're in a garage in some kind of coffin.
no.
And
No.
yeah. And so the bodies were eventually cremated, but there wasn't enough funds. Eventually, Cantrells did cremate the body, but there was not enough funds then to pay for burial after that. There was a whole thing. I mean, so it seems like I kind of wonder if this place did something like made arrangements with the community, because a lot of people that lived in that area were they were probably not, they didn't have a lot of income. And so they probably said, look, we'll help you out, but you got to make payments. You got to get this paid within so many. And people just didn't then, because they just don't
Mm.
have the means to do it. So then what do you do? But that's when I think you contact the state and say, hey, you got to help us out, because
Yeah.
because a lot of times the funeral home's just a
Something.
funeral home. That's just the mortuary, the funeral home. The cemetery is owned by the county or the city or private industry. It's not usually one and the same.
Mm-hmm.
Now back home,
Right.
there is one funeral home that is in league with the mortuary. So they're the funeral home, the mortuary, and the cemetery as well. So that's who clearly, that's who they refer everybody to, and now like they were a little, when my mom died, they were really trying to push her to be married, to be buried with my dad, and she wanted to be cremated. So we got a little pushback saying, "Hey, look, you know what?" And I understand what they're saying, because if I push my business to Mud Lover and Mud Lover pushes something to you, you know, I'd be a little pissed off if, I didn't get that money pushed back to me somehow. But I get it. It's one of those things.
Yeah. It's Yeah, so I understand what Cantrell's saying. They're like, we can't be on the hook financially to bury the bodies. Like, we've already done the service. We probably haven't gotten paid
Yeah.
for the service yet, even embalming or cremating. And now we have to go bury these guys. So it's kind of like, I understand that. Or put them in the little thing near the ashes, whatever you call those things, the little drawers,
Yeah, in the mausoleum
Urn?
urn or
Oh.
whatever. Yeah.
Yeah, like an urn, and a lot of, they're like a big wall and they have just all the urns. So, but it still costs money to do that. I think it's a racket, like it's way too much money, but they're in the business of making money, these
Yeah.
places. So, okay, so April 18, they are along with, and I don't know how Cantrell's still in business because at this time, Jamaica's, let's see, no, this is when Jamaica finally loses her license, okay, because the inspectors are done. So they said Cantrell loses their license, they lose their registration, Jamaica's mortuary license is revoked based on incompetence and gross negligence, improperly storage of body, poor conditions in the embalming room. And the other thing they were doing, which so many funeral homes do, they're collecting all of this money because you can prepay for your cremation and your funeral and all this stuff so that your next of
Oh,
kin doesn't have to do it. So they're collecting all this money, and not by law,
right.
they have to put that money in an escrow account because it's not theirs, and they're spinning it. So now the state inspectors have found the fraud, and that's what was allegedly happening in Pocatello as well. Okay. So the funeral home was now thoroughly inspected. They just went in there and did, and they find there's 20 more bodies laying around. 2 of the bodies were in advanced state of decomp and covered in mold. One of the
Ugh.
bodies had been there since February, so this
Wow.
was April, the end of April. The second body belonged to a family member who had been there since January. There were 269 containers of cremated remains in the basement. Of the cremated remains, 52 of them were unidentifiable. Only 4
Oh,
later were retrieved by families who said that I think these are like my Uncle Fred. I don't know how they figured it out. The remaining
yeah.
cremains ended up going to this place called Preferred Removal Services located in Flint. And they're, I guess, waiting for people to pick them up because people don't know whose or whose. There's just like
Mm.
boxes of remains.
No, it's at that point, these are the same kind of people that, after you cremate a body, and I don't know a lot about the process, but again, I've done some research on stuff like this. Every time you do a cremation, whether it's a human, an animal, whatever, you're supposed to clean the actual oven out altogether. And
Yep,
the
one
reason
body
you're
at a time.
exactly that way things don't
Yeah.
get intermeshed.
Right.
So isn't this and I can imagine that they weren't doing that either. So you've got essence of Uncle Fred, you've got essence of Aunt Jemima, you've got
Yep.
essence of whoever.
Yep.
You're like, it's kind
Mhm.
of a crapshoot. Yeah, I think that's Uncle Bob, and it could be anybody else.
Well, and that did happen to our teammate who is in the funeral
Terrible.
home business here with the funeral home here in Pocatello. They don't know if his grandpa's like if the ashes they got back were actually his grandpa. But they burn at such a high
Oh,
temperature. So when people think that they're going to go out and start a campfire and put Uncle Fred in it because they've clubbed Uncle Fred over the head, you got to burn it like 1800 degrees and up
Yeah.
to get rid of bone. That's why crematoriums work at very high temperatures to burn
Yeah.
it down. And still, when you get cremains back, it's not all ash. There are still little tiny pieces of bone because they're on a
mm.
schedule and they've got to get the next one in. I mean, it's 24/7 thing, So like you
Yeah.
said, they push the ashes out
Right.
into a metal tray, like a metal like box to let it cool, and then they've got the next person going in. I mean, it's just a rotating thing. And then that metal box is supposed to have a label on it, and then when it's cold, it can be put into whatever kind of urn it is for final disposition and labeled for the family and the whole 9 yards. But it sounds like they weren't doing any of that. So they were at least cremating them, though.
Needed the space.
So yeah,
You can't just have all that stuff around. You got to keep burning
no.
that.
But then they're putting them in boxes in the basement. So where's the family going? Hey, where's Grandpa?
Yeah.
Like, you've had him now for a month.
Exactly.
And so that's what there's a disconnect, and I'm not sure what was going on. So the LARA, the agency, the licensing agency, gets some more complaints, and they find out there's a lot of missing paperwork in this place, as you can imagine. They're not keeping up with their paperwork. And they find this anonymous letter comes in, and the letter said there are a bunch of infant corpses hidden in a crawl space. So they're like, what? The letter said, if you look above the door, there's a crawl space, and there are several infants back there dating from over 10 years ago. So the anonymous letter also said that an employee forged hundreds of documents, including death certificates, and police have opened now a criminal investigation because everybody's had it. They're like, what the hell is going on with this place? So yeah, they go in because now that it's shut down. The state has shut this place down, and they go in, and so the place has been shut down, and it goes up for sale, and this poor man buys this building because he wants to turn it into a community center. And he said, yeah, you can go in and do whatever you want, because I just bought it like on a tax sale, and I don't know what the hell's going on with this building. They go in there and they start looking in crawl spaces and find the babies. And there was a cardboard box, and there were babies in it, and there were 11 infants. They ended up using a cadaver dog to sweep the rest of the facility, and they didn't find anything else. But the outcome of all of this stuff is Raymond Cantrell admitted to holding bodies to accommodate the community. He said, look, people couldn't pay for the burials, so I was taking bodies in. He said he was flat out disgusted because people weren't paying for this, but he said, look, people asked me to hold their loved ones, and I thought I was doing them a favor. It's like, no, I don't. You knew better. I think you knew better. And why would you hide the babies then?
You should have known
Why
better.
would you do that? I mean,
yeah.
When asked about the bodies in the garage, he said, well, if I had them in my funeral home, the funeral home wouldn't smell fresh. So we put them in the garage. So they found nearly 300 remains in this place. Some of them were veterans who were supposed to have been buried with honors. They finally did receive, when they identified those remains somehow, and an agency stepped up and provided military honors and their family photos of people then with the veterans all in their caskets, and so they did get finally a military honors. I'm not sure how long though it took. The funeral home's license was revoked for at least 10 years, and they got fined $115,000. I don't know if they ever went back into business. Jamaica Boone, she had to pay $11,480 in restitution, and her license was suspended for a minimum of 3 years. I do have some photos of, let's see, I'm going to share this. I do have some photos of That is the crawl space.
That's the
Oh,
overhead. Wow. Okay.
This is the outside of the
dang.
funeral home. Yeah, so they were just stuffed up there. So, um, I can understand the philosophy of trying to help out the community. I cannot understand how you go from that to hiding bodies.
Yeah.
And were they cremated? I'm not sure about that. The babies.
Hmm.
You'd
Okay.
think that would be an odor issue if they weren't.
That's true.
I don't know where that is in the building either. So, yeah.
And I get.
Mm.
I mean, I can appreciate if that's truly was his intention. Hey, I'm trying to help these folks out. And I'm sure that he went in with the goodness of his heart to try and really make a difference and help folks out. Because we all know that's just a horrible time in your life. But you would think that he would have, or somebody on his staff would go, you know what? I'll bet you the city, the county, the state, the feds even would be able to help us. Now, even back in the
Yeah.
80s, there was still grants that went out. So either somebody was just winging it, or somebody was just, not even trying to look for that assistance. Because I imagine at that level, there's people that specialize in that field.
Mhm.
It's kind of like going and getting a grant to, work with kids. You go to the people that do the grant that work with kids or whatever.
Mm.
Unfortunately, I think that he might have started off with a good heart, but I think after a while, the money was one of those things that was just a lot more appealing than
Mhm.
going through the process and getting rid of these folks and whatever. I mean, but think about it, the money that you're getting paid to do that. And again, it's been a while, but I remember it was a lot of money, um, to with my folks. And once you've already done the job, it's just a matter of kicking it to the next person. But
Mhm.
I don't know. I'm not in that business, so I
Yeah.
have no idea.
Yeah,
It's
I
horrible.
do. There's got to be something better. There's got to be a system to manage this that's better because this is, I think there's
It's
like,
everywhere.
I've investigated so far like 6 just right in Detroit. There's 3 or 4 in Colorado that were just horrendous. We've talked about one of them. There's the one in, I think it was Alabama, that was just like mind blowing what was going on there. But there's so much of this stuff going on. And I think people get into this business, like you said, it's the best intentions and it is a moneymaker. But I don't know. I guess it's really, really easy when you have somebody else's money in your hand to not do the right thing. Right.
It's always,
So,
that we all know that it's always easier to
yeah.
spend somebody else's money.
Oh boy, and not put that money in escrow. You think about
Oh
a
my gosh.
Yeah.
cremation. When my mom died, but that was 20 years ago, so her cremation was like $1,200 or so. It wasn't that
Mm.
much, but now it's like 3 grand or more, depending on where you live. And then if you want to do a
Wow.
whole funeral on top of that, you're looking at 5 to 15 to $20,000.
Easy, easy. My wishes are to be cremated, and at the the joy ceremony, I want to be brewed into a tea, and I want everybody to take a drink of me. I think that way, the the people that love me, I will still be in them. And my friends, I just, it's the circle of life. That's the way I look at it.
I just take me up and dump me out in Yellowstone, let the bears have at it,
No.
or the
That's it.
wolves, or you know, just
Yeah.
put me back to that. Let them feast, and then I won't. It doesn't matter. Yeah, I wish we
Circle of
could
life.
do that.
See? How
Like,
awesome would that be?
let the ravens have me, or the vultures, or something. Let him, you know. And then sweep the little pile of bones somewhere, and
Put them in one of the lava flows out there. You're good.
yeah.
You know, you could go to one of those skin farms, the body farm. That'd be
The
kind of cool too.
Oh
You know,
yeah.
I would. You know, they put me in a car, and I'd be just like, you know, put me in a Jeep
Did you
in my.
hear about the problems they're having at one of the body farms? I'm not sure if it's the one in Tennessee, with the feral cats coming in and eating all the bodies.
Oh my gosh.
They're running all
That's
these experiments, right? That's what the body farm is for,
right.
right? But all these feral cat colonies have now discovered it's the easiest
God.
food.
It's a catastrophe. It's a buffet.
Oh God, it's so wrong. Anyway, I hope that if anybody's listening to this and they were, if you please check out the funeral homes that you're taking your loved ones to, because it's the most important. You
Definitely.
can look at your state regulations, your state regulatory agency, no matter what state you're in. There's somebody who's regulating these people. And when there's suspensions or license revocations or complaints, it's all public. That's all public record.
Yeah.
Check them out, because God, the last thing you want, I can't
Yes.
imagine taking my dad or
No.
my mom in and then not knowing that those ashes I got back are his or hers.
You know,
Yeah.
exactly. And you know, you think about
Horrible.
that. You think it's a horrible time. You are beside yourself. Even my dad died of complications of Alzheimer's. My mom died of complications from a stroke, and you know that there's end time coming. There's just that, and it's one of those things. It still punches you right in the face,
Sure does.
and
Yeah.
you have to have that. If you're not able to do it, you have to have hopefully somebody that is in your group or your circle or your
Right.
family, whatever, is actually able to take that step back, take a deep breath, and okay, this is the direction that we go in. And
Mhm.
and it's I'll guarantee, yeah, it sucks. It is. I mean, it's worse than herding cats. It's just one of those things.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. So anyway, I think our next story is going to be a different. We'll do something a little bit different, because this one was very depressing. But yeah.
Yeah.
But anyway, it's gruesome things that are going on out there, and thankfully, thankfully we don't know it all, because we're already bombarded with a lot of
Yeah.
negativity every single day. I don't want to know it all, but researching this stuff is hard. So
yeah, and and the funny
Yeah.
thing about it is you go down a
Heartbreaking.
friggin' rabbit hole. Once you start looking here, then
Yep.
it's like, holy cow, it's over there. I'm doing some research on
Yeah.
Alcatraz right now. And again, the intentions were grand, and then a lot of bad things happened. So
Yeah.
it's pretty interesting in that kind of stuff. And
Yeah.
it's unfortunate, but
Yeah.
it is what it is.
All right, folks. Well, thank you for tuning in, and we will catch you with another episode of Something Bizarre in another week.
Well,
All right.
like and subscribe. We appreciate it. You guys have a great rest of your day.
Yeah.